What if the chaos inside your head was never a sign of weakness, but simply a lack of training? Imagine living in a world where your mind is constantly hijacked notifications, deadlines, endless comparisons, all pulling you in different directions. Most people think this is normal, that confusion is just part of modern life, but the Stoics knew better. They believed clarity was a discipline, not a gift, and they built habits to sharpen it every single day. Picture Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, leading armies in the middle of war. Around him, soldiers shouted, the empire's future trembled, and yet he sat in silence, writing words that still guide us 2,000 years later. How could a man with so much chaos on his shoulders carry so much calm in his mind? The answer lies in practices that were simple, repeatable, and powerful enough to cut through the fog of noise. The truth is, your mind is not free when it is cluttered. It is not free when it reacts to every impulse or when it drowns in the voices of others. Mental freedom comes when you train it, when you strip away illusions, discipline your thoughts, and choose where your attention goes. The Stoics understood this, and modern thinkers like James Clear and Cal Newport prove it again today. Habits, not motivation, create clarity. In the next chapters, you'll discover how silence, writing, discipline, and the art of separating control from chaos can completely reset your way of thinking. Each practice will give you a tool to clear the battlefield of your mind and to see with precision where most only see fog. This is not abstract philosophy. This is a manual for daily mental clarity. Before we go deeper, I want to ask you something. Where are you watching from right now? Comment your city or country below. It's incredible to see how Stoic wisdom can travel across the world, connecting people who want the same thing: calm, focus, and a free mind. Stay with me until the end, because this journey begins in the most dangerous place of all, the war inside your head. And that's where we're heading next. The war in your head. Every day you wake up, and before your feet even touch the ground, the battle has already begun. Thoughts rush in without permission, unfinished tasks, messages waiting, fears of what could go wrong. The mind becomes a crowded battlefield where enemies are invisible but relentless. It's not swords or shields that overwhelm you. It's the fog of distraction, the weight of comparison, the echo of doubts you never asked for. The Stoics knew this battlefield well. Marcus Aurelius described the mind as a citadel, a fortress under constant siege. The enemy wasn't outside, it was inside. For him, clarity meant not letting invaders set the rules of his day. And while he faced the chaos of empires and wars, we faced the chaos of screens and voices pulling us apart. Different ages, same fog. Think of your mind as a soldier in dense smoke. You swing in every direction, but nothing feels solid, nothing feels clear. The more you fight blindly, the more you exhaust yourself. That is what happens when your days are lived without awareness. You fight against shadows instead of real enemies. No wonder fatigue feels heavier than the tasks themselves. Stoicism teaches the first step to clarity. Name your enemy. Is it distraction? Impulse? Fear of what others think? Until you see it, you cannot fight it. Marcus Aurelius would write at night to strip illusions from his mind, exposing them to the light of reason. You can do the same. A blank page can often reveal more truth than hours of thought left swirling in silence. Try this. Pause for 1 minute today and write down what clouds your mind the most. Don't dress it up. Don't hide it. Just put it on paper. Suddenly, the fog begins to thin. The battlefield is no longer invisible. You can see the shape of your opponent. If you never learn this skill, you risk a life of confusion, where the fog becomes so thick you forget that clarity even exists. Most people wander like this for years, living reactive lives without realizing they are still at war. But you don't have to. The choice is always closer than it feels. By naming the chaos, you've taken the first step toward dissolving it. But the Stoics never fought fog with more violence. They used something far more powerful, something we've almost forgotten today. They used silence. And that's where we go next, the discipline of silence, and why it may be the sharpest weapon your mind has ever ignored. The discipline of silence. Noise surrounds you more than you realize. The ping of a notification, the hum of traffic, the endless chatter of opinions on screens, all of it seeps into your mind until silence feels unnatural. Yet the Stoics saw silence not as emptiness but as strength, a training ground where the mind sharpens itself. Epictetus often paused before answering a question, not to appear wise, but to ensure his words came from clarity rather than impulse. Silence is rare today because people fear what they might hear inside themselves when the noise fades. Without distractions, truths rise to the surface. Doubts, regrets, desires we try to bury. But this is exactly why silence is so powerful. It reveals what must be confronted. To the Stoics, a clear mind begins with the courage to face its own voice without interruption. Imagine a lake. When storms rage, the water distorts everything. But when the wind stops, the surface reality with perfect clarity. That is what silence does to the mind. It turns chaos into reflection, giving you a mirror to see what is truly there. Without this pause, the mind remains like turbulent water, always moving, never clear. Modern science agrees. Studies show that moments of intentional silence reduce cortisol, lower stress, and activate areas of the brain tied to memory and focus. In other words, silence is not a luxury, it is mental hygiene. Just as you brush your teeth daily, silence clears the residue left by constant stimulation. Start small. Tomorrow morning, before you reach for your phone, sit in silence for just 2 minutes. No scrolling, no music, no words, just breath and awareness. You will notice how unnatural it feels at first, as if you've lost something. That feeling is the sign that you've been addicted to noise. Keep practicing, and that discomfort will transform into calm. The Stoics often reminded themselves that true freedom is not found in speaking more, but in speaking less and with purpose. Seneca said, "Speech is silver, but silence is golden," not as a cliche, but as a warning that constant words dilute truth. In silence, the mind learns to value quality over quantity, depth over noise. Silence doesn't erase problems. It makes them visible. And once you see them, you can act with intention instead of reaction. That is the discipline, choosing to create space where clarity can grow. Yet silence alone cannot free you completely, because the real chains are hidden in what you crave and what you fear. And that is where we go next, untangling the desires and fears that keep your mind from being truly clear. Untangling desire and fear. The Stoics believe that nothing clouds the mind more than unchecked desires and unexamined fears. Desire pulls you forward with restless hunger, while fear drags you backward with paralyzing doubt. Together, they stretch the mind in opposite directions until clarity shatters. Seneca once said that the man who is enslaved to wealth is poorer than the one who owns nothing, because his vision is consumed by craving what he does not have. Think of desire and fear as tangled strings inside your head. The harder you pull, the tighter the knots become. Chasing every desire only creates more hunger, and running from every fear only gives fear more power. The Stoic approach was not to cut these strings violently, but to untangle them with patience and reason until the knots loosen and the mind can breathe again. One of the simplest tools is a question Marcus Aurelius repeated to himself. Is this under my control? When you apply this to a desire, status, approval, wealth, you see how fragile it is. When you apply it to a fear, failure, rejection, loss, you notice how little of it belongs to you. What is outside your control does not deserve your chains. In modern life, desires are amplified by social media. You see someone's success and crave the same, forgetting that clarity cannot grow in comparison. Fears are amplified too, disguised as anxiety about careers, relationships, or the future. But here is the paradox. When you shrink your desires and face your fears, your vision sharpens. The fog begins to lift, not because the world changes, but because you stop being pulled in every direction. Try this practice today. Write down one thing you deeply desire and one thing you deeply fear. Then ask yourself if they truly belong to you or if they are puppets held by the hands of others. You will feel the knot loosen. The desire becomes less urgent, the fear less threatening, and clarity returns. Freedom does not come from achieving everything you want. It comes from no longer being enslaved to what you want. And peace does not come from avoiding everything you fear, but from facing it until it loses its grip. This is the discipline that the Stoics mastered, a freedom deeper than possessions, status, or safety. A mind freed from unnecessary desires and crippling fears is lighter, calmer, and sharper. It can finally see the path ahead without distortion. But the world will not stop sending storms your way, storms beyond your control. And that's where the next step of clarity begins. What happens when life throws storms at you that you cannot prevent or control? The Stoics had an answer, and it is the key to peace in the middle of chaos. Control and the uncontrollable. The heart of Stoicism beats in one timeless lesson. Separate what is within your control from what is not. This single distinction, if practiced daily, clears more mental fog than any strategy or secret. Epictetus, born a slave, understood this truth better than most. His body could be chained, his freedom taken, but his mind remained untouchable. He taught that no one could control your thoughts, your choices, or your inner response unless you surrendered them. Look at your own life. How often do you suffer over things that never belong to you? The weather ruins your plans, the market shifts unpredictably, someone's opinion cuts you deep. These storms are real, but they are not yours to command. The only thing you can command is the way you hold the sail, the way you steer your ship through the waves. Once you stop wrestling with what you cannot bend, the waters begin to calm. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. Notice his language. It's not a suggestion, it's a discipline. Each day he chose to focus only on the levers he could pull, leaving the rest to the universe. This practice didn't make him passive, it made him precise. A simple exercise can anchor this truth. Take a sheet of paper and draw 2 columns. On the left, write mine. On the right, write not mine. Fill the page with what weighs on you: work, relationships, health, ambitions. Then place each one in its rightful column. When you see the division, clarity arrives. You stop wasting energy fighting storms that were never yours to calm. Modern life floods us with illusions of control. Technology promises certainty, but reality resists. The stock market, the behavior of others, the pace of change, none of these bow to your will. But your habits, your focus, your discipline, those are yours. A stoic mind trains itself to stop bleeding energy into the uncontrollable and instead invest it fully into the controllable. Ask yourself right now, what storm are you facing? Is it truly within your control, or are you trying to bend the sea with your bare hands? Leave me your answer in the comments, because sharing it is the first step to release. Naming the storm weakens it. The moment you stop clinging to the uncontrollable, peace begins to flow in. Clarity doesn't mean the storm stops, it means you stop mistaking the storm for yourself. And once you master this, you'll be ready for the next discipline, one sharper than silence and stronger than acceptance. The art of writing your mind into order. Because even after storms fade, the battlefield in your head can remain chaotic. The Stoics discovered that writing could cut through that chaos like a blade. Writing as mental architecture. Marcus Aurelius never intended his words to be published. The book we now call Meditations was nothing more than his private notebook, written in tents and palaces, on battlefields and sleepless nights. Why? Because writing was his way of sweeping fog from the corners of his mind. Thoughts, when left unspoken, multiply like shadows. But on paper, they are forced to take shape, and in taking shape, they lose their power to confuse. The Stoics treated writing as self-therapy, not performance. Seneca wrote letters to friends that often sounded more like confessions than teachings, stripping his thoughts down until clarity emerged. Each word on the page was a mirror, reflecting what the mind tried to hide. For them, writing was not about style but survival, an act of building inner order. Modern science echoes this truth. Journaling has been shown to lower anxiety, regulate emotions, and increase focus. It is not about keeping a diary of events, but about giving your mind a blueprint. When you write, your scattered thoughts stop colliding in silence and instead line up with precision. Writing, in this sense, is mental architecture. You don't need to write pages. Start with a 3-line structure each morning. One fear, one desire, one thing within your control. This forces clarity. Fear is named, desire is questioned, control is reaffirmed. Over time, those 3 lines become a foundation. And when storms hit, you will already know where to stand. Imagine your thoughts as dust filling a room. You can walk through it blindly, coughing and stumbling, or you can open the window and let it settle. Writing is that window. It clears the air, allowing you to breathe again. Each sentence is like sweeping the floor of your inner citadel, restoring it to order. Seneca once warned against living without self-examination, because unexamined minds remain prisoners of their own illusions. Writing is the act of examining without excuse. It is where you confront the truth, not what you tell others, but what you whisper only to yourself. In that honesty lies liberation. Do not underestimate the power of a pen. In a world of constant input, the act of output, pouring thoughts out of the mind, is an act of rebellion. It tells your brain, "You do not own me, I own you." And that shift of power is where clarity begins to last. Yet even with writing, there is still a trap waiting: the illusion of busyness. A life filled with constant activity can look productive, but in truth, it may be nothing more than fog in disguise. Discipline as freedom. At first glance, discipline looks like restriction. Waking early, training your body, limiting distractions, keeping routines, it can feel like a cage. But the Stoics taught the opposite. To them, discipline was the sword that cut through the fog of chaos. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that the body resists, the mind hesitates, but the soul commands. By choosing discipline, you free yourself from slavery to impulse. Think about it. A person without discipline is not free. They are pulled by cravings, delayed by procrastination, hijacked by every temptation that appears. But a disciplined person chooses their path. When Seneca warned against wasting life, he wasn't asking people to work harder. He was asking them to work with purpose, to train their habits so their time served them instead of slipping away. Modern thinkers echo this wisdom. James Clear shows that habits, not willpower, shape who we become. Cal Newport proves that deep work, protected by strict routines, creates breakthroughs in focus. Both are reminders that freedom is not avoiding rules but designing better ones. Discipline is the architecture of clarity. You don't need to start with monumental effort. Choose one daily discipline, something small, repeatable, and intentional. A cold shower to train discomfort. 10 minutes of reading instead of scrolling. A moment of writing before the day begins. Each act is like sharpening the blade of your mind, cutting away the fog little by little. Over time, these small disciplines compound. What once felt restrictive becomes second nature, and what once felt impossible becomes effortless. The paradox emerges: discipline does not trap you, it liberates you. It gives you the power to act consistently with your values instead of being ruled by impulse. Picture Marcus Aurelius again, carrying the weight of an empire yet still carving out moments to write, to reflect, to ground himself in truth. If an emperor could guard his discipline amid wars and politics, what excuse do we have in the quiet battles of daily life? The price of discipline is effort, but the reward is freedom. A free mind is not one that does whatever it wants. It is one that consistently does what is right, even when it is hard. And that clarity becomes unshakable strength. But the Stoics never stopped with personal freedom. For them, clarity was not just about the self, it was meant to be given back, to serve others, and to light a path for the world. Clarity beyond the self. The Stoics never saw clarity as something to be hoarded. To them, a clear mind was not only for personal peace, but for service. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that he was a citizen of the world, not just an emperor of Rome. His discipline, his calm, his clarity, they were not for his comfort alone. They were tools to serve others, to guide, to protect, and to lead with justice. This is where modern self-help often falls short. It teaches us to optimize for ourselves, our productivity, our health, our success. The Stoics went further. They believed that the purpose of clarity was to strengthen our connection to others. A mind free from chaos is a mind available to listen, to comfort, and to act with compassion. Think about how fog affects not just you, but those around you. When you are overwhelmed, you snap at loved ones. When you are lost in distraction, you neglect those who matter. But when your mind is calm, you radiate calm. Your clarity becomes contagious. It spreads peace into your family, your workplace, even strangers you meet. Seneca argued that no life is well lived if it is lived only for the self. To him, service was not optional, it was the natural outcome of wisdom. Clarity is the same. Once you strip away the noise, once you free yourself from fears and false desires, you see more clearly how deeply we are all connected. Here lies the highest form of Stoic freedom, to live not for chaos, not for ego, but for the greater good. This doesn't require grand gestures. It begins in small acts. Offering your attention fully in a conversation, giving without expecting, using your calm presence as an anchor for others who are drowning in noise. Try this today. Ask yourself, how can I use my clarity to help someone else? It could be a kind word, a moment of patience, or guidance when someone is lost. In giving clarity, you strengthen it within yourself. The Stoics understood that true greatness is measured not by what you control, but by how your clarity influences the world around you. And this is where mental freedom reaches its highest point, when your life itself becomes a beacon in the storm. Because the ultimate freedom is not only a mind released from chaos, it is a life that lights the way for others, even in the darkest storms.